Hello, I'm Mihaela from learnpolymerclay.com and I have prepared for you a fused glass inspired project. The interesting thing about this project is the fact that you will be inspired to use nail art foils to decorate your polymer clay pieces, and you will find a large array of colors and holographic effects, and I'm sure that this will be a great inspiration for your work with polymer clay. In fact, I tried to use these foils some time ago, and I tried to use them like you would use any other kind of foil. So I put them on top of the polymer clay and then I baked the pieces, but it didn't work. So I had to find another solution, because these foils are really very interesting and good looking, and so they would be an interesting decoration for polymer clay. And so I baked the pieces and then I tried to glue these foils using weld bond adhesive, and it worked. So as I said, the interesting thing about this project is the idea of the possibility of using such wonderful foils for your polymer clay pieces, and also the fact that you can control the areas where you apply the foils, because they will get stuck only to the areas where you apply the adhesive. So where's no adhesive, they won't adhere. I hope you like this project. I hope you'll take this inspiration and use it in your work with polymer clay. Thank you. As always, I started by conditioning the clay. I'm working with black polymer clay. Then I passed it through a medium setting of my pasta machine, and I cut the sheet in two. I'm using half to create the back of the piece, and I'm using a texture plate to texture what is going to be the back of the bead. And I'm using a rectangle cutter to cut the shape of the bead. And I will cut two parts, one with the texture on the back, and this is going to be the back of the bead, and the other one I'm going to use it to make the front of the bead, the upper layer. I'm using my hands. You can use the roller or the handle of the craft knife to soften the edges, because I don't intend to sand my pieces after baking them. And I'm using head pins and the round nose pliers to make two loops that to make a shape with two loops that I intend to press into the polymer clay, and I will use these to attach the beads together using jump rings between. So I decide how I'm going to put the pieces together, and I pressed the distorted head pins into the polymer clay, and then I'm sandwiching the layers together. I'm taking care to align the layers very well, and I press them together. And then I'm using a stamp to create a texture on the front of the bead. And you might need to use the texture for the back again, because by pressing down the polymer clay, it is very possible that the design on the back is not so visible anymore, so you might need to work a little bit on the back of the bead as well. And then you'll have to take care of the edges again to create smooth neat edges for your bead. And I will do this for the other two beads. I'm doing the same steps. I texture the back. I make the loop attaching wires. I'm using a mandala patterned stamp to create the pattern on the front of the bead. I texture again the back of the bead, and I will do the exact same steps for the third bead. And for the third bead, I'm going to use a fern stamp to create a small fern detail on the front of the bead. And this is the stamp that I used to impress 3 fern patterns on the bead. Then I bake the pieces, and you can bake them for 30 minutes if you are using Cernit, or 45 minutes if you are using a different brand of clay. And if you want a high contrast between the foils and the base, you can add a layer of neo-opaque black acrylic paint, Lumiere black acrylic paint. If you think that the process would take too much time, you can of course skip this step and rely on the fact that you are working with black polymer clay, so you'll have some contrast, but I wanted to have very high contrast. Of course, you can use any other color of polymer clay for the base and play with the color of the base and the color of the foils that you intend to use to make the beads. And then if you are going for this part, for applying the black acrylic paint, you'll have to wait for the paint to dry. I even painted the curled attaching wires. You don't have to do that, of course. So as I said, I let the paint dry, and then I'm deciding what colors, patterns of nail art foils I'm going to use to create a design. And I'm using scissors to cut out triangular shape to create a design, but you can of course cut any shape that you like. And I'm cutting also stripes for the round bead. As you can see, you have a very interesting holographic patterns, and they will be visible in the final bead. So I really think that these nail art foils could add a new dimension to your polymer clay pieces, and you can use them for making faux fused glass pieces, or I don't know, sparkling pieces. Sparkling, beautiful pieces, I would say. In fact, I cut too much pieces because I wanted to be sure that I have enough for the project. And then I, of course, you can save the scraps and put them and store them somewhere and use them for other projects. So and then using weld bond, I will apply the glue on the areas where I want the foils to stick to the polymer clay baked piece, to the baked polymer clay piece. And I'm using a brush to apply the glue. And then I will use a clear brush to take off the excess glue. Sometimes it is easier to work with small surfaces. You apply a small quantity of weld bond, you apply the foils, and then you go to the next part, to the next area that you want to cover. Because when you are trying to decorate large areas, the glue might dry while you are decorating part of the bead, so maybe it's a good idea to work in small areas. And then I will just take the cutout foils and create a nice design. You might want to leave spaces between the foils, and thus the background color will show more. And you have to use your fingers to apply pressure on the foil before lifting it up. And in case you notice that you are not very satisfied with the result, you can apply a little bit more weld bond glue, and then use the foil again with the areas where you still have the foil, because after transferring the foil onto the polymer clay, you will see that you'll have clear areas where the color and pattern have transferred onto the polymer clay. So if needed, you can apply small quantities of weld bond. And then use the same foil to decorate the bead. So as you can see, this is a very easy process. It might take a little bit of time to work on the details, but it's a very simple technique. And then it's up to you if you want the background to be visible or not, or how much you want, yes, how much the background do you want it to be visible or not. if you want a larger area of the background to be visible or a smaller area. And in case you consider that you've done too much, you've applied too much foil and you want it more, I don't know, you wanted a larger part of the background to be visible, you can use acrylic paint in the same color of the background, black in my case, and apply it on top of the areas where you want it to have a black background. And of course you'll have to let it dry before applying the triple thick gloss glaze. And I also advise you to let the weld bond dry before going to the next step. So you should leave your pieces, I don't know, for 20 minutes before applying the weld bond adhesive. And even during the curing process of the weld bond, which takes several hours, you might notice some white milky areas inside the bead, but don't worry, this is the weld bond that it is going to dry, I don't know, in 12 hours, and then you'll have a very nice glass-like finish on the beads, and the milky areas will completely disappear. For the fern decorated piece, I'm applying the weld bond adhesive only onto the areas where I stamped the fern. And of course the foil will get stuck only to the areas where I applied the adhesive. So this allows you to create beautiful patterns, because you are controlling the areas that you are decorating with the foil. And for the third round piece, I decided to create a simple striped design, and I'm applying thin stripes of foils. I'm applying weld bond, and I'm creating a striped pattern, and then I will use thin stripes to attach on top of the areas where I applied the glue. So if you notice that the foil would not adhere to your polymer clay base, you might need to add more glue. This might mean that the glue has dried out and you have to add a little bit more. The interesting part about these nail art foils is the fact that they are not really expensive, and you will have a lot of foil, a very large strip to work with and decorate your beads. And I can assure you that you have a lot of colors, a lot of holographic, textured designs, and I'm sure you'll make very beautiful polymer clay foil decorated pieces using this kind of nail art foils and baked polymer clay. And in my case I used weld bond adhesive. I don't know if a different brand of adhesive or glue would work. And as I said earlier, if you decide that you've applied too much foils and you would have you would like your background to be visible more, you can use black acrylic paint and paint on top of the foils. And I also decided to add a black border, to paint a black border, because I wanted to have to enhance the faux fused glass effect. But again, if you don't want to do this, you can totally skip this step. If you think that this would take too much to finish such beads, you can totally leave out this step, because of course after applying the black acrylic paint, you'll have to wait for 10 minutes, 15 minutes before the maybe more before applying a thick coat of triple thick gloss glaze. So now it's the time to apply the thick coat of triple thick gloss glaze. And if you have a patterned design, like I'm using here with the embossed design created with the stamps, I will apply the glaze and cover the recessed areas, the hollow areas, and then I will continue to apply a nice coat to make sure that I have I will have a glass-like finish on the finished piece. So I will apply a generous coat of triple thick gloss glaze, and for the finished pieces, for the one with red, orange, yellow and blue, red, yellow and blue, I applied several coats of triple thick glaze, and in the end it really looked like a lot like fused glass, and I was very happy with the result. I will apply a little bit on the sides because I want the sides to be a little bit shiny, like a piece of glass. And then you'll have to wait for the triple thick gloss glaze to dry, and then you'll be able to put your pieces and string them and use them to make necklaces, earrings, I don't know. So as you can see, I'm using a chain, a silver colored chain. I'm using jump rings and a flower toggle clasp, and I'm using jump rings to attach the pieces together. So now you can see that the curled design made with the head pins is very useful, and that it allows you to attach the pieces together using jump rings. And then I will attach the toggle clasp, and I prefer to attach it on the front, not on the back, as I would maybe you would usually put it in the back, because I thought it was a very beautiful toggle, and it would add a little bit of it will look beautiful alongside the 3-4 fused glass beads. So I hope you liked my tutorial. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope you'll take this inspiration and use them in your work with polymer clay. Thank you, and stay tuned for more inspiration for your work with polymer clay.